What if Naruto was Sun's heir, Death's Guardian Part 2? Reading. Sun's Heir, Death's Guardian by Engineer Forever. Chapter 2. Jason picked up the book next and cleared his throat. There weren't many things Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze was afraid of. Really? Thought everyone as they listened intently. Fighting enemy shinobi that would kill him in a heartbeat. No. What? Exclaimed the demigods in surprise. Angering someone of high standing or power. He did that every waking moment of his life. Oh yeah, he got that from Daddy, Hermes commented with a grin, and Artemis nodded in kind. It was, sadly, true. Fighting various creatures hell-bent on killing those he cared about. Never. Everyone nodded in agreement to that statement. Explaining to a very angry friend who happens to be a girl where he's been for the past 7 years. That poor soul, Leo said as he saluted. Percy and Jason both leaned back, saluting as well, before being smacked upside the head by their girlfriends. A little bit. Answers, Whiskers, Talia growled as she pulled the son of Apollo further down by his collar to her height. Now. Oh, you have a little nickname for him, how adorable, the love goddess gushed with a smile. And so demanding. Worried that he's met another girl, Talia? Annabeth asked with a snicker. This was fun, in the daughter of Athena's opinion. The older girl had messed with her about Percy already and payback was in order. The hunter groaned into her hands, trying to prevent her slightly red cheeks from being seen. In the back of his mind, Naruto heard a voice say, "Hey, wait a minute, isn't she the one that was turned into a tree?" A good argument, Hazel pointed out, getting a nod of agreement from her brother. The voice was promptly ignored, for the blonde demigod was well aware of what awaited him if he decided to counter with sarcasm. Years with 2 super strong women with short fuses had managed to break through even his skull. At least he's already trained, Aphrodite commented with a tiny giggle that was shared with her daughter. Then there's the fact he wasn't ready to tell his tale, and he really wasn't sure how Talia would react. Knowing his luck with girls' reactions to his explanations, it most likely wouldn't be pleasant. Girls. Talia thought with a knitted brow before she went wide-eyed at even thinking about this guy like that. She was a hunter, darn it. Talia-chan, I would, but the thing is, oh my gods, what is that? He shouted while pointing at something behind them. Everyone eagerly or worriedly wondered what was behind the group, leaning forward with curiosity written on their faces. As he anticipated, the demigods all turned and prepared for a fight with something that wasn't there. He grinned and turned to leave, running as fast as he could. The males thought of the sheer brilliance of that technique and thought of ways to employ it at later times. But for some reason, he wasn't going anywhere. The women grinned at Talia, who was smiling big time. That would have worked, Talia said as she held tightly onto the hood of his cloak and making the blonde sweat bullets, if you didn't use it last time. Damn, Naruto muttered. Oyabun said I'd have more time. Oyabun. Percy repeated in confusion, what's that mean? Perce, we've been over this, Apollo lectured chittingly, getting an eye roll from said demigod. Talia's eyes widened and she clenched her fist before driving it through the blonde's head. Before everyone's eyes, he combusted in a cloud of smoke. How'd he switch with a clone so fast? Leo wondered. It was like the guy just knew Talia was going to go after him. The daughter of Zeus growled through clenched teeth as she glared at the blonde standing in the bus's doors. Come on, Talia-chan, Naruto said with a smile, I'll explain everything after we get to the camp. Damn right you will, the raven-haired girl spat as she approached the bus, because if you don't, so help me. Naruto tuned her out. Hey, the daughter of Zeus shouted in anger, I was ranting at you. As she and the other campers from Camp Half-Blood boarded the bus, turning to the D'Angelo siblings with a small smile. He put his hands on their shoulders, you two ready for this? Yeah, Nico replied enthusiastically as he climbed aboard the bus, sitting near the front. Bianca bit her lip before shrugging, sure. The guardian of Hade's children frowned at the elder child's lack of enthusiasm while she boarded before grinning mischievously. He'd at least make the trip enjoyable for her, or he'd scare her shitless. Don't you dare. Hades gritted out. Apollo bit down on his lip to keep from snickering at his son's antics. On the magic bus, that does not go to school, the takeoff was smooth, they made it into the sky and so far they hadn't blown up or crashed. And then Naruto suddenly let go of the wheel and stood up. Is he nuts? Piper cried out. The hunters questioned his sanity. As they should, Artemis said with crossed arms and a glare sent to her brother, who pointedly avoided her gaze. Talia cursed at him profoundly, making Bianca cover her brother's ears. Talia nodded while Nico playfully rolled his eyes at Bianca's overprotectiveness. Percy and Annabeth silently prayed for their parents' protection. Even Percy and Annabeth prayed for their other selves. And Grover was bawling fearfully. Oh, relax. Naruto called over the various noises. When no one did, a twitch appeared in his eye and the blonde thought, no trust. Absolutely no trust in me from these people. With someone like Apollo as a parent, trust is something you have to earn. The hard way, Hephaestus stated with a grunt. Hey! He shouted, gaining everyone's attention. He pointed at the driver's seat, where a duplicate blonde sat driving. This isn't my first rodeo, you know. Okay. That is just cool. Hey Dad, look. No hands. Leo joked, getting a few laughs from his fellow demigods. Ignoring the odd looks from the newer hunters, the children of Hades and Percy, Zoe's glare, Annabeth's envious stare, the now unconscious Grover, and a livid Talia, Naruto went to where the D'Angelo siblings decided to place themselves and leaned against the pole on the aisle seat, earning their attention. Crossing his arms, he asked, so, how's it going? How'd you do that? Both asked at the same time, eyes wide with awe. Naruto blinked before throwing a thumb in the clone's direction. You mean that? He asked. The two nodded and the blonde chuckled, another ability of mine. More from my heir, mother's side of the family I guess. His mom could make clones of herself. An odd Percy trailed off, what was she, Superwoman? Though most of the males were thinking of how envious they were of Apollo. A woman that could multiply. The possibilities were endless. Whoa. That's so cool. Nico exclaimed, can you teach me? Naruto shrugged, doubt it, but I could try. Maybe after we get settled into our cabin. Nico grinned like the devil at the thought of learning how to make clones of himself. Bianca frowned, but, you said we'd live in our father's cabin. How can you live in there when you're Apollo's son? It's part of the gig, Naruto replied with a shrug, your old man wants you too safe, at any cost. Nico looked at his dad and gave him a small smile as he turned away, missing the microscopic one that his father sent him. I've got a, free pass, so to speak. My dad gave me his blessing a while ago. So, you're gonna bunk with us? Nico asked hopefully. Naruto grinned. Yup, it'll be like I'm your big brother or something, he replied before ruffling the boy's hair. Sound good? Yeah, Nico exclaimed before looking at Bianca. Isn't this cool, Bianca? A big brother, now you don't have to worry about me. Nico smiled at his younger other self. Yeah, he was really lucky. Bianca smiled slightly, almost guiltily, before looking up at a grinning Naruto. The blonde winked and walked away, unaware of the blazing blush he caused to fly up the girl's cheeks. Nico scowled and gave the, stay away from my sister, look to the pretty boy. Naruto leaned on the aisle seat in front of Annabeth and Percy, eyeing their closeness before he addressed his fellow blonde, how's it hangin', Annie? The response was a slap in the side, making him wince, ow. Ooh, nice one, Percy said with a grin. That's what the older boy got for interrupting his Percy-Annabeth time, even though they weren't together yet. That was for earlier, Annabeth said with a frown as she looked at the older boy. Honestly, sometimes you remind me of the 11th cabin. A grinning Hermes joked, well, we'd have to check a bit more, but maybe an honorary one if he is good enough. He'd have to find his own bed though. Geez, Annie, I've already got one mom, he replied with a roll of his eyes, how've you been? Any boyfriends yet? The blonde smirked discreetly when he saw Percy's fist tighten. Ah, Annabeth cooed as she patted Percy on the cheek before asking him, would you really be that jealous if I had someone at that time? Percy just huffed and turned away with pink cheeks as she smirked. The look dropped and he focused on the other blonde while he thought, good, just a bit more and he'll snap at me. If he's anything like the old me that is. Old you. Percy thought with a furrowed brow. As for Annabeth, the daughter of Athena, just blushed. Gods, Naruto. It's been 7 years and that's the first thing you ask me. Talia chuckled, turning to Annabeth and asking, didn't I ask that, too? The demigoddess in question just huffed and didn't even bother to answer. The elder blonde teen frowned. No, I asked how you were first. I can see you've started to grow from a cute little girl into a beautiful woman, so it's kind of expectant. Annabeth blushed a bit and Percy tried and failed to hold a growl in. Everyone else just gave a quiet chuckle at them while Aphrodite sighed happily. Oh, and so I can bash the skulls of any exes you may have. No one hurts my precious people. Annabeth smiled softly at that, before standing to wrap her arms around the cloak-wearing teen. Oh ho, looks like other Percy's got some competition, Aphrodite stated with a large grin at the possibilities. He tensed momentarily before hugging her back, similar to how he did Artemis, much to Percy's growing ire. The others just laughed at other Percy's jealousy as said demigod had a large brooding look on with a matching frown. I missed you so much. Annabeth whimpered from their embrace before her shoulders started to shake as tears leaked out. Why? Why did you do it? Why did you have to leave? Annabeth's eyes widened at just how sad her other self was. Was this Naruto really a large part of her life? Naruto closed his eyes and hugged her tighter, preferring to comfort her rather than answer. It was a hard decision, 7 years ago, but he couldn't say that he'd do it any differently, even with how it turned out for the other boy in their merry group. Luke. Those who knew the boy thought sadly. That reminds me, Luke's going to pay. Naruto silently raged. No one leaves his or her friends behind. No one but trash, that is. That somewhat dampened the depression more of those that thought of the boy. Ah, a familiar voice cooed, making Naruto blanch. How sweet. My little fishcake is making a move already. You are a dead man, Naruto announced as he released Annabeth and whipped around to leap at his father. The disguised sun god yelped and dove under his son's body, sliding on the ground before flipping to a standing position. The demigod flipped in the air and landed on his knees, reaching behind him and grabbing something hidden by his cloak. Wow, now that was Matrix-worthy, Piper commented with a bit of awe in her voice. The other heroes nodded in agreement. Geez, Naruto, I can't believe you're still so easy to tease, Apollo taunted. The blonde guardian merely narrowed his eyes as they flashed gold and threw something in his left arm at the god. Apollo laughed as he twisted and weaved out of the way of his son's shuriken, though he did wonder internally where the weapons came from. His thoughts were cut off by the sudden braking of the bus, making everyone fly towards the front. Everyone, that is, except for one very pissed off Naruto. He reached into his cloak yet again and pulled his collapsible bow out, extending it and rushing towards his father. Apollo blinked and grinned before pushing his feet into the ground, using what the hidden lands called chakra to stick to the floor. Though, due to a long period of not using the energy, he unintentionally stuck too well, making him a perfect target for the approaching blonde. Ha ha, making yourself a punching bag. Only you could pull that off, Ares said as he and the other gods laughed at the sun god. Apollo mockingly laughed along with them before huffing and crossing his arms. I'm gonna make you beg me to stop, Naruto announced viciously with an evil grin that Apollo had seen only on 3 other faces, his mother's, his sister's, and Naruto's mother Kushina. I am truly liking this woman more and more as I hear of her, Artemis stated. She really wanted to meet her. Apollo groaned and put a hand on his face. Just what he needed, another Artemis. Oh crap, the god muttered when he saw the look on his son's face before pulling out his own bow, which was just a larger version of Naruto's, and holding it defensively. Naruto swung his bow over his shoulder as if to swing it before ordering the driving clone, pull up. Now. Hold on to her butts. The clone shouted over the hunters and campers' screams and curses. The bus suddenly pulled up from its descent, making everyone fly backwards and Apollo's eyes widened before he grinned. That's my boy, he thought approvingly as he tensed himself when Naruto's already impressive speed doubled. Their bows clashed with a loud clang and Apollo laughed when he found himself being forced back into a skid. As everyone else on the bus cursed the two blondes, Apollo and Naruto had their own conversation. Trained with Ares, did you? The god inquired. Wah, stated the god of war in surprise. The blonde teen grinned, his appearance becoming fox-like. You could say that, he replied cryptically. Apollo would have asked what he meant when Naruto lifted his foot and kicked him in the stomach, pushing himself back to land where the D'Angelo siblings were. Naruto twirled his bow before collapsing it and putting it away, looking at the two to his left with a grin. To answer your questions on what you'll learn from me, something like that, he said to them, getting a pair of odd looks before Nico voiced his opinion on the matter. That was awesome. The boy exclaimed before looking at his still frozen sister. Did you see that, Bianca? Did ya? This is gonna be so cool. Nico groaned as his cousins laughed at him. Gesturing to the screen, the son of Hades defended himself. Come on. I was 10, and that was freaking cool. Bianca could only nod her head dumbly as she stared at the blonde that said he was their guardian. She quickly averted her gaze as she felt her cheeks heat up yet again. Well, someone has a crush, Piper claimed, not that she could blame the girl. In his own way, the blonde was pretty cool, and handsome. Luckily, the action was ignored by almost everyone. Apollo, still in the guise of Minato Namikaze, grinned. Thank you, Aphrodite, you've just made Naruto's life that much more interesting for me. No problem, the love goddess chirped as Apollo grinned at her. Naruto, who was ignorant of his spot as his father's newest favorite source of entertainment, approached his steering clone and suddenly backhanded it over the head. The clone vanished in a large plume of smoke and the blonde went to sit down, when Apollo appeared in the seat, his feet on the wheel and his arms crossed behind his head. I got it from here, Naruto, the god said before waving his son off with a dismissive hand motion. Go flirt with Taliah or something. Everyone gave a laugh at Taliah's expense as said girl groaned once again. This felt like a running gag with her. Naruto growled at his father before turning around to find a seat. When he did so, he was met with glares from mostly everyone else on the bus, save the D'Angelo siblings. He blinked innocently before pointing at his father. He made me do it. It's what I say every time, Hermes quipped with a smile, getting a glare from his sunny brother. Oi, I didn't make you do squat. Apollo called from the front. Now sit down, shut up, or I'll tell the old man how you were the one that sent him the squeaky toy. First, Zeus glared at every single one of the gods that laughed at him and then glared the screen. Second, what squeaky toy? Naruto found a seat rather quickly, but unfortunately for him, it was right next to Taliah. The blonde grinned at her nervously, and he jumped when she clung to his arm. So bold, the woman of Doves squealed. It was then Naruto remembered one of Taliah's fears and mentally kicked himself. Everyone immediately thought of acrophobia. That is kind ironic, Jason pointed out, since he found out about it, it actually bothered him a bit that his own sister was afraid of heights seeing as they could both fly. Well, it was more he than her since she refused to do so. Shut up, Taliah shouted childishly and crossed her arms with a small pout. She just didn't like heights, so what? Said girl was glaring at him for two reasons. The first was from the same reason as before, she wanted answers as to why he left their Naruto, Taliah, Luke, Annabeth and Grover's group. I wonder how we met him, Annabeth wondered out loud. Where had he been for the past 7 years, and why was he only 2 years older than when he first met her? And the second was because he made her acrophobia act up big time. Which was the only reason why she was clinging to his arm. His nice, strong, well-toned arm. Is it you malicious Taliah? Be truthful, Hazel teased, getting a glare from the older girl, but it was dulled greatly by her bright red cheeks. It made her wonder what else was well-toned. The love goddess giggled suggestively, getting groans from the virgin goddesses. Stop right there, Taliah berated her hormone-driven thoughts. Oh please don't, Aphrodite said with a pout, as she looked away from the blonde son of Apollo and chose to look at her limbs wrapped around his arm before releasing it. She took a few deep breaths in order to regain her composure, which crumbled when Naruto suddenly wrapped his arm over her shoulders. Oh he is good, keeping her on the edge, Apollo cheered, getting a rock chucked at his head from the patron of said girl. He frowned at her. What? I can't cheer this on. No, Artemis said with finality. Sorry, Talia-chan, he muttered apologetically, I forgot. Why yeah, well. You still owe me an explanation, Whiskers, Talia snapped. Unconsciously, she leaned into his embrace and a minute sigh escaped her lips when his arm tightened around her shoulders. Apollo's smirk widened in the driver's seat. Oh yeah, I owe Aphrodite a couple of love songs. Maybe Naruto could write a few. Ensnare a few more girls' heart. Hee hee hee. Artemis turned to her brother in disgust before snapping, Apollo, stop trying to turn your son into some kind of playboy. The god of the arts just shrugged before boasting, I can't help it if he's such a natural. He gets it from me, no doubt. As the god thought this, Naruto, Talia, Bianca, a few girls at Camp Half-Blood and a young warrior in California sneezed. Everyone turned to Apollo who was blinking in surprise at the number of girls, but quickly covered it with a puffed chest of pride, yep, totally gets it from me. Back on Olympus, Aphrodite grinned as she looked at a picture of her half-brother's son, the one chosen by Hades to be his children's guardian. Apollo had told her how the boy's life had been so far just a year ago and asked that she give his son what he nor the boy's mother couldn't. Love. Needless to say, after a wrenching sob, Aphrodite agreed. Everything's falling into place, the goddess of love thought with a smirk. Apollo landed Saul and had everyone disembark, but kept Naruto behind. The blonde stared up at his father curiously as he was given a serious look that wasn't often found on Apollo's face. An imposter, Hermes claimed loudly as he pointed at the picture, getting nods from everyone. Apollo just hung his head. He could be serious, really. It was just so boring. What did you want, Dad? Naruto asked. Apollo bit his lip, before sighing and speaking, it's just, I've given you a lot more attention than your brothers and sisters. Naruto held a hand up. Relax, Dad. I can't promise I won't say anything, because without a doubt Sagi will let something slip. Yeah Percy, you and your big mouth, Nico complained to said Sagi. Percy just growled at his cousin and looked like he wanted to pound on him. And he was not Sagi. Stupid pretty boy. But I can promise I won't think myself better than them. They're family. Hestia smiled brightly at that. If only the rest of her family could think like that. Sadly she didn't hold her breath, it was wishful thinking though. The god of the sun chuckled and ruffled his son's hair, getting a groan from the boy as the bus changed back into a convertible behind them. You're a good kid, Naruto. Must be from Mom, the blonde replied with a smirk before walking towards the camp's entrance. Wait, Apollo called, before tossing his son a wrapped object, give this to Chiron. Naruto nodded after he caught the object and turned back to the camp. He lifted his hand up without looking back, see ya around, ya dick. Hey, Apollo shouted in annoyance. Little brat. Apollo chuckled out before hopping into Saul and manifesting some sunglasses. Naruto pulled his hood up as he entered the camp before flashing to Bianca and Nico's side, right into someone's office. The gathered demigods Percy, Annabeth, the D'Angelo kids, and Talia jumped while a wheelchair-bound man with long hair and a beard moved backwards in shock and a man holding a Coke dropped his can. I see sitting around like a lump has dulled your swordplay, Ares jeered at the Diet Coke god after a snort. Said god just scowled at the warmonger, his face purpling slightly. The latter scowled and snapped his fingers, making another Coke can appear in his hand, before glaring at the hooded newcomer. And who are you? He asked, taking notice of Percy's tensing. The hooded teen pulled his hood down, his gold-blue eyes shining with confidence. He stood defensively behind the two dark-haired demigods. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the blonde repeated, making the man drop his Coke again as he stepped back, son of Apollo and Kushina Uzumaki, guardian of Hades' children and according to the rules of this camp, the new counselor of Cabin 13. Aye it's you. The disguised Dionysus stuttered out as he pointed at the boy with a shaking finger. He who walks in shadows, born from light, will raise his arms and lead the fight. The god of wine will cower in fear, as this means his time grows near. Dionysus frowned. What in Olympus' name was that about? Naruto blinked in confusion. What? Stay away from me. Mr. D ordered, before running around the group and out the doors behind them. He popped his head back in briefly. Oh, and Chiron, please tell me how it all works out. Bye. The gathered demigods blinked before turning back to an equally stunned Chiron. Well, let's be off then, I guess. If I may, Naruto interjected before the group could leave. Chiron, the teacher of heroes, I was asked by my father to give you this. Suck up, Leo sang. Well, at least he knows to talk the talk, Hyper interjected to the Latino boy. Tossing the disguised centaur the package he was given, Chiron caught it in his hands, carefully unwrapping it before giving off a chuckle. Percy and Annabeth tilted their heads in confusion when they saw what it was. An iPod, the son of Poseidon questioned when he saw the familiar small machine in the counselor's hands. Chiron shook his head in amazement. Ah, Apollo, he murmured before scrolling through the music. Nice choices, how'd he get that song on here? Chiron, Percy inquired, getting the centaur's attention. What about them? The dark-haired boy gestured to Naruto, Bianca and Nico. Naruto rolled his eyes and pulled his hood up. I will find our cabin, he told the siblings. Stay and listen to Chiron. I'll see you later. Hey, wait a minute. Talia tried to add in something, but the blonde flashed away in a bright light. The girl growled and her eyes narrowed. Damn. Language, Talia, language, Chiron warned as he rolled past her. Come, let's give these two a tour. Naruto silently walked through the campgrounds, using his ability to bend light to become invisible. Many of the gods blinked and whispered to each other as even Apollo was surprised. He nearly never had a child with photokinesis. That's funny, Nico said out loud and gaining everyone's attention. He continued with an amused smile on his face. We have umbrekinesis and he has photokinesis, weird combo. As well as using his cloak's ability to become transparent, making him, in a sense, a ghost. After finding cabin 13, the blonde swiftly strolled past many other cabins, pausing only to examine that of his cousins, in the 8th cabin. One avoided arrow later, he was on his way yet again. How typical of them, Aphrodite stated as her eyes rolled. He stopped at the 7th cabin, bearing the mark of his father, and took note that all of the campers around it could see him. His disguise useless, Naruto let himself reappear fully, making the campers tense. One camper, with the sandy blonde hair his father usually had and a complexion much similar to his own, stepped forward. Who are you? He asked cautiously, moving his fingers to a few of their siblings, signaling them to either get backup or weapons. Naruto chuckled. It's rude to ask for one's name without giving your own, you know. True, the younger teen replied. My name is Lee Fletcher, counselor of cabin 7. Who are you? Lowering his hood, Naruto answered. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, counselor of cabin 13. The campers tensed and stepped back. Hades frowned at this. Well, at least this Naruto will hopefully spur some confidence in his younger siblings that the gods' children were not as bad as history made them out to be. The blonde frowned and his eyes narrowed. I see. See what? Lee asked nervously. He was not ready to face a spawn of Hades. If this is how my siblings react, I can only imagine how the rest of the camp will, Naruto replied before looking to the sky. Just because I am associated with Lord Hades you assume I am dangerous. No. Well, yeah, Lee finished lamely. It's, I wonder how your response would be to me being the son of Apollo, the older teen asked wistfully, making the cabin members blink. Lee frowned. Okay, buddy, first of all, you can't be in charge of cabin 13 if you're one of us, he said. Before he could continue, Naruto had whipped his bow out and fired several arrows, all of which ended up pinning the cabin 7 counselor to the wall of their cabin. Whoa, nice shot, Talia complimented as Artemis begrudgingly nodded in agreement. He started walking forward, which made the campers smirk as they anticipated their father combusting the new camper for intruding on his territory. Their eyes widened in fear when he stepped up to the cabin's entrance, not a sign of a fire on him. Nor were there any signs of illness, another common punishment from their father for intrusion without invitation. Naruto raised his gloved hand as he stood a small bit away from Lee Fletcher, making the teen close his eyes in fear. Instead of an agonizing burn from unholy fire or something along those lines, there was a minuscule pressure on his forehead. Opening his right eye, Lee stared into the amused golden blues of the blonde in front of him. 2 fingers belonging to the cloaked teen were pressing on his forehead, right between his eyebrows. "Foolish little brother," the elder blonde chuckled with a smirk, "why would I hurt family?" Apollo smiled, skilled in more ways than one in a caring sibling. Oh yeah, he was liking this kid more and more as his son. Lee only stared with wide eyes, as did his siblings, while their obviously older brother started unpinning him from the walls of their cabin. Naruto brushed his brother's shoulders off and gave him a grin. "Scared ya, didn't I?" he asked cheekily, getting a splutter from Lee. Naruto laughed and patted his shoulder. "Show me around, Lee. I've got a bit before I have to get back to cabin 13. The eldest son of Apollo present went into cabin 7 to start exploring, before he was quickly followed by the others, all of which were bursting with questions and introductions. A bit later, Naruto sighed as he started to look around the 7th cabin, Lee at his side and giving a brief history of it. "And we're tied with cabins 9 and 10 for the most deceased counselors," the younger son of Apollo said. "It kind of sucks." The sun god dimmed a bit at that, but tried to keep a strong poker face. The parents of the other cabins kept a stony face as well. "Gods, you all need training," Naruto muttered as he pinched his brow, getting a frown from Lee. "We train," the counselor protested. "No one, save the hunters, are better archers than us. And when you are forced to fight or flee, what happens?" Naruto barked, stopping as he turned to face his younger sibling. "How often do you turn away from the war god's children, only to be struck down from behind?" Lee frowned. "So what do you suggest? Father's only good at archery and medicine, it's all we know." "And you think Dad was just handed that gift?" Naruto asked incredulously. "No. Our old man worked his godly ass off for his archery to be on par with Auntie Arte's. For God's sakes, we descended from the guy that taught Chiron. The teacher of heroes." "Exactly," Apollo cried out before looking at Artemis. "See, Art. I am awesome." "One comment from a boy in another dimension does not make it true," Artemis retorted. Zeus cleared his throat and the twins stopped their squabbling before it could really begin. By now, other members of the 7th cabin had filled the area. Naruto looked at them, his little brothers and sisters. He knew that at most he was the oldest for their generation, and would be the eldest for a long time to come. Then he continued, "I may not be your counselor, but I am your brother. I will be damned before I see or let any of you die by unnatural causes. So, I've decided you're all going to be there when I train the other members of cabin 13. Golden-skinned faces turned pale and several campers stepped back in fear at the announcement. The blonde's eyes shined in determination and he gave them a frown. "I expect there to be no hostility between this cabin and 13, am I understood?" No one spoke. He scowled. "Am I understood? So bossy," Hyper commented with a frown, but Jason shook his head. "Nah, he's just trying to get a message across. You can't be the nice guy all the time," he stated firmly. He could respect the older blonde for that. "Yes," the group repeated. No one dared to speak up against how it was against the rules to order cabins around when you didn't belong to them. Looking to an awestruck Lee, Naruto asked, "Do you agree to this, counselor?" Lee blinked before he realized what Naruto was saying. The younger blonde closed his eyes and nodded. "I agree, brother." Naruto smiled foxily. "Good. We meet at the arena at 7. Gonna need a montage." "A montage," Apollo started to sing quietly with a bob of his head. Naruto left his brothers and sisters minutes after his declaration of their training. Many were scared, others soon became excited, and even more were curious. That evening, Chiron called for an assembly. "Campers," the centaur said, his disguise dropped, "we have 3 new members. All of which have been claimed." The 11th cabin sighed in relief. Things were getting too crowded for them. Hermes frowned, but smiled slightly at how the problem was fixed now, all thanks to his boy and Percy. The sun seemed to pause in its descent beyond the mountains as Bianca, Nico and Naruto took the stage. The younger two were now wearing the orange shirt of the camp, black jeans and tennis shoes. Bianca's hat was removed and her hair was pulled back into a loose braid courtesy of Annabeth. She always looked better like that, Nico said with a soft smile. His sister was where she belonged. In his mind, he really couldn't wait to see what this story brings to both her and himself. Naruto had removed his cloak, and as he stepped on stage, he was eyed hungrily by the campers of Cabin 10. Of course they would do that, Artemis said with a, no duh, tone as her eyes rolled. An orange muscle shirt that contrasted with his golden skin tone hid a well-defined torso, faded carpenter jeans with 2 holsters taped to either thigh, and combat sandals on his feet. Around his waist was a sort of belt, similar to one that would be expected on Batman, as a member of Cabin 11 mused, only it was dark blue and a silver plate with a spiral leaf as the belt buckle. Well, Talia, tell us. Is he dashing? Piper asked with a gleam in her eye, making her mother proud. Talia readily ignored her, but, maybe, the guy was okay looking. Maybe. Chiron noticed with subtle amusement as he glanced over the group that Talia was sending glares to Cabin 10. Bianca and Nico D'Angelo, Chiron announced. The two stepped forward and instantly a yellow-green flame appeared above either of their heads, forming the Helm of Darkness, symbol of Hades. Campers burst into chatter, only silencing when Chiron whinnied loudly. He turned to Neil, all hail Bianca D'Angelo, and all hail Nico D'Angelo, children of Hades. Nico smiled at the official claiming, now that looked like something. Reluctantly, the other campers knelt and bowed their heads. Naruto had knelt as well, a small smile on his face as he glanced at the two. Bianca looked like she wanted the ground to open up beneath her, while Nico grinned and bowed back, more like one would after an impressive actor feat. You going for Broadway next? Hazel asked teasingly after a giggle, getting a playful shove from her brother. Maybe I will, jokingly answered the Ghost King. After a moment passed, Chiron rose as well as the rest of the campers before he looked to Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, step forward. The D'Angelo siblings stepped backwards as the blonde stepped forward. Naruto took a deep breath before looking up as the symbol of his father appeared above him, the golden laurel wreath. A small smile crossed his face before he pulled his bow out and knelt to the ground with his head dipped. More murmurs filled the crowd before they suddenly silenced. The image above him suddenly was filled with a smaller Helm of Darkness. The crowd gasped again while Chiron spoke, all hail Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Son of Apollo, guardian of Hades' children and the counselor of Cabin 13. Darn, I wanted to set curfew, Nico whined a bit as he leaned back. But wouldn't Bianca be the counselor? Hazel pointed out as Jason put the book down and cleared his throat a bit and took some water that Piper gave him. Nico crossed his arms with a pout at that sad fact. So, you like him? Piper asked her boyfriend as he finished his drink. Jason was quiet for a beat before hesitantly speaking, he seems okay, so far. Who's next? Asked Apollo with an eager grin on his face, any volunteers? I guess I'll do it, Leo sighed sarcastically. He honestly didn't mind, this was getting interesting. Zero Frank paced around the Argo 2 in a panic. Okay, bathroom issue aside, there has to be a reason they're gone, think, he cried out in furious thought. He paced a bit more before he leaned on the railing of the ship and hit a button with his foot. Wah, he said as he was suddenly sprung into the air by a springboard panel on the deck. Leo, was his cry as he fell into the water below. Leo cleared his voice as he picked up the book. Now, there once was a man from Nantucket. Leo. The demigods complained. The boy just smiled. Sorry. Anyway. Naruto stood up after Chiron's announcement, collapsing his bow and tucking it away. The symbol above him faded away and he smiled softly yet again. He was proud of his heritage and status. It wasn't every day one was the son of the sun god and in the employ of the Lord of Death. Not ever if I recall correctly, Hades commented with intrigue. What does that mean? A boy that was tall and broad-shouldered asked as he stepped forward from his place standing next to the other heirs campers. How can he be a member of Cabin 7 if he's Cabin 13's counselor? F you, that's how, Naruto replied with a smirk, electing a few snickers from other campers. The demigod snickered at the response. He'd been waiting for a good time to use that comeback, and ironically, it was from one of the children of the god that taught him it. Heir's brow furrowed in confusion. Though he did censor himself for Nico's sake. Not that it lessened the glares from Bianca and Chiron. As they should, Hestia commented with a frown, so much foul language thus far in this story. The teen's nostrils flared and his angry green eyes narrowed. You wanna go, Blondie? Ooh, the teens said in anticipation. The gods looked indifferent, but were silently cheering for a fight. Nah, I went to the bathroom already, he replied with a shrug. Nice one. Nico snickered out. This guy always seemed to have a witty comeback. Before turning to Chiron, ignoring the boy's heated glare, and asking, so where's the food? Chiron blinked and gestured to the dining pavilion that overlooked the sea. Naruto grinned and looked at the two D'Angelo children. You two hungry? Yeah, Nico replied, getting a hearty chuckle from the blonde as he walked towards them. Naruto glanced at a still nervous Bianca and put a hand on her shoulder. You okay, Bianca? The blonde demigod asked, concerned for his charge. The girl nodded slightly, making him smile softly. Good. Let's get some grub. With that, he vanished in a flash of light, getting a burst of chatter from the campers. Chiron sighed and looked up at the sky, frowning when he saw the moon start to fall sooner than it should have. Artemis frowned at that. She had always hated her blunder of getting captured by the Titan of Endurance. She sighed. It made her remember Zoe. Her heart ached. What if she had to witness her most faithful maiden fall once more? It was gut-wrenching. Something bad is going to happen soon, Chiron thought with a frown. I just know it. Naruto, Nico and Bianca arrived at the pavilion near some space by cabin 12, which suddenly exploded into green flames, as a black Gothic table rose from the ground. The counselor of cabin 13 sighed and rubbed his head. Lord Hades, subtlety is not your forte. Please, he could give dear little brother here a run for theatrics. Poseidon's comment was met with the glares of his brothers, but he just smirked at them in amusement. Oh, Nico moaned out as he held his stomach, I don't feel so good. The blonde demigod put a hand on the younger boy's back and rubbed it apologetically. Sorry, Nico. I forgot that Raijiji gets mad when I take others with me. I will never get used to that, Bianca muttered as she rubbed her stomach as well. Naruto gave the siblings a sheepish smile before gesturing to the table. Take a seat, he said softly, I've got the food covered. The two Hades children nodded and sat down, Nico on Bianca's left, the girls sitting on the right side's edge near where they arrived, so they could see the other tables. Naruto nodded approvingly before reaching into one of his pouches and pulling out a scroll. The blonde then broke the tape that kept it sealed before rolling it open in front of the D'Angelo siblings. Nico and Bianca looked down at the strange symbols, the latter confused and the former curious. Here's something I learned back home, the son of Apollo said with a smile as he put his hand on the scroll's edge and channeled some chakra into it. Two large plumes of smoke appeared in front of his charges and they coughed from inhaling it. They stopped as the smoke cleared and a delicious smell filled their nostrils. He can store food, Hazel asked. That is amazingly handy. I would kill to have something like that for a quest. And it could work for other stuff, I bet. Storage-wise alone, that is amazing for a demigod, Annabeth said with a snort before she analyzed as her mother nodded. But the wisdom goddess was wondering how it was done. Nico and Bianca gaped as two steaming bowls of noodles sat in front of them. Naruto chuckled at their shock and awe, earning their attention. The blonde demigod sat down opposite of them. Well, he asked, go on, and eat up. But where? How? That's so awesome. Naruto smiled at the D'Angelo siblings' varying responses. I'll explain it later. Just eat. The others are gonna show up soon and I have a feeling that. Hey Blondie. Naruto sighed and turned to face the same guy he rudely replied to earlier. Behind him were several muscled boys, all just as tall as the one in front of them. They all shared masculine facial structures, broad shoulders and impressively large physiques. Golden blue eyes looked up at glaring green, and the teen sneered, you don't look so tough up close. The gods scooted to the edge of their thrones, eager to see the before-fight smack talk. The goddesses shook their heads in distaste. The same could be said for you, Naruto replied with a frown as he stood from his seat, nearly matching the boy's height. I can guess you want to fight. Wow, what a surprising notion. I do wonder how he figured that out, Athena spoke with a deadpan sarcastic tone. Honestly, her war brother's children were so predictable. A gleam appeared in the boy's eyes as he smirked. Yeah. You could say that. Then it can wait until tomorrow, Naruto dismissed casually, sitting back down. Brushed off like he was nothing. Apollo jeered as Ares growled at him. Before the camper could retort, the blonde continued with a smug, or would you like to lose in private so your pride isn't hurt, child of Ares? Ooh, the demigods said in a group, this was always the best stuff when it happened to others than themselves. The teen, and his brothers, scowled. Fine. Tomorrow, we'll spread the word so your siblings can patch you back together when I'm done with you. All you had to say was that you wanted an audience, the blonde commented as the boy walked away, his brothers following behind him. His smirk fell and he looked at the two kids. You're going to watch me fight him. The two nodded and went back to their meal. Naruto smiled at that and tapped the goblet in front of his seat. Sake. I don't think he knows the rule for the goblets, Annabeth giggled out, getting a few laughs from the other kids. The cup filled up with clear liquid and Naruto grabbed it, taking a small sip. He coughed it up a second later. The hell? Sprite. I said sake. How the hell am I supposed to get a buzz from Sprite? Know my plight, mortal. Dionysus jeered with a victorious tone. What's a buzz? Nico asked, tilting his head as he looked up from his noodles. I was 10. Nico growled before he pouted like he was a 10-year-old. Sadly, that just made everyone laugh a bit harder. Bianca frowned at Naruto disapprovingly. The blonde guardian stared at the boy for a few moments before looking at the ground to his right. With a mild glare, Naruto muttered, Lord Hades, you are evil. Of course I am, Hades said with a smile. In the underworld, the god in question stopped mid-conversation with his wife before grinning. Not one of his usual I'm so evil and brilliant grins, but a something I arranged is going according to plan grin. That is one of my favorites, the rich god said in appreciation. Shaking himself from his stupor, the death god smiled at his confused wife and said, Naruto just found out something I hid in our agreement pertaining to one of his unsavory habits. After dinner, the rest of the evening was a total bust. Well, that was partially because as soon as he got back to cabin 13, the teen in question picked a corner, curled up in the fetal position, and sobbed. Hard. Seems you have a bit of drinker for a son, Apollo, the god of wine commented on. Apollo shrugged, so his kid drank a bit, so what? He was drinking plenty at his age. While Bianca gaped at the scene, Nico tried to cheer his new brother up, but when he asked if Naruto wanted a drink, the sobs renewed. Wow Nico, way to pound that nail in, Talia commented at how a little boy brought a man to tears without even trying. Nico shrugged. It's a gift. Eventually, translation. 2 hours later, the two siblings managed to get their guardian into his bed, where he promptly conked out from sheer emotional exhaustion. They then retreated to their own rooms for the night. The first thing the blonde guardian realized as his father intentionally woke him with the light of the sun was that his class started in an hour and a half, and his fight would be in 30 minutes. Naruto groaned and rolled out of his bed, reaching up and behind him to pull his shirt off. He scowled at the article of clothing. That is the last time I go to bed sobbing over not being able to get drunk, thought the demigod before standing and going to his closet. And I wish I had that resolve, the god of madness bemoaned. With a small smirk, he threw the doors open and grabbed a small leather box with a golden laurel crown on it. Time to put someone in their place, Naruto said as he opened the box and pulled out the object that rested within, ready to fight at my side again, Q. Mark Andrews was certain this new guy would be creamed if his half-sister, Clarice, was here, but she wasn't, so he would have to step up. He was ready for the fight, having arrived in his bronzed armor with the Spartan-based helmet atop his head. On his left arm was the large 3-foot-wide circular shield with the Olympian symbol on it, and in his right hand was a sword with a 2-foot-long blade. Currently, Mark was impatiently stabbing at a straw dummy, his brethren from Air's cabin watching intently. The green-eyed Ares child turned to face the members of Apollo's cabin, who woke at every dawn on the dot, before sneering, well. Where is he? He'll be here, Lee replied in confidence, glancing up at the filling arena seats. His attention went to the entrance when two certain black-haired siblings walked in. Bianca shyly approached Lee and, after convincing the taller boy to lean over, whispered in his ear, "Naruto is on his way, he said he needed to do something first." The counselor of Cabin 7 nodded and righted himself before telling his cabinmates to go find seats in the audience. Most did, taking the seats near Aphrodite's girls, attempting to get their attention. "Play on, littler players, play on," cheered the father. "Apollo," Artemis chastised with a frown. "What?" was the innocent reply. Lee sighed and rubbed his forehead. Their father's corruption ran strong in some of his siblings. Hopefully, not in Naruto. "Let us hope, nephew," the goddess of the moon agreed. "Hey, where is he?" Mark cried out, his blood already pumping. "What, did Goldilocks wimp out or something?" "And we are reminded that witty banter is not a child of Aries thing," Percy commented with a smirk. "I mean really, he was called Prissy." "Lame. Take that back," Nico demanded, being held in place by his sister. "Naruto's gonna wipe the floor with you." "Nico, shut up," Bianca hissed. Her brother paid her no heed. "No way, Naruto's not a coward," the boy replied with a frown. "He can't make fun of Naruto behind his back, I won't let him." "Ah, whittle Nico likes his new big brother," Talia teased in a baby voice, getting Nico to blush in embarrassment. "Well, isn't that nice of you?" a voice behind the two D'Angelo siblings said. They turned to look up at their counselor, and their jaws dropped. Dressed in a golden armor, Naruto definitely looked like a chosen warrior of Apollo. Around his head was a black cloth, keeping his spiky locks out of his face. The chest plate he wore looked strange, not unlike a bulletproof vest, as it rested over a tight navy blue sleeveless undershirt. Over his hands were equally golden gauntlets that were attached to fingerless gloves of the same color fabric as his shirt. He had dark slacks on, with his belt around his waist and the ends of the slacks taped from the ankle to mid-shin, golden shin guards that attached to the sandals he arrived in protecting his feet. However, it was the weapon on his left arm that drew most attention. Ares let out a whistle at the armor. "Yeah, he got that imperial gold from somewhere," Jason murmured as it looked like something that someone in the tops of a cohort would have. Some of the girls were busy drinking in the form of the Apollo team, a few blushes crossing their cheeks. The shield was incredible, a strange thin kite-like shape just a few inches longer than his forearm. The crimson painted on it looked it was covered by actual blood, and the frightening visage of a fox's face engraved in gold did little to minimize the fear factor. A 5-inch leather handle with a ruby at the end was seen protruding from the shield over his hand. Only two people knew what the weapon was outside of the heirs and Artemis cabins. And those two were Mr. D and Chiron, both staring in shock. Percy, seated near Annabeth, Grover, Talia and Chiron, saw his teacher's face. "Hey, Chiron, you okay?" the dark-haired boy asked, earning the other's attention. The wheelchair-disguised man had a slack jaw and slowly responded, though it was more of an odd proclamation than a response. "The Arcadia shield," Chiron said. Grover's head whipped around and stared before he fainted, falling backwards in his seat. "What?" Some of the gods snapped in shock, mainly Hermes and Apollo. "The what?" Percy, Annabeth and Talia replied. Behind them, seated with the other hunters near Mr. D, Zoe snorted. "Thy ignorance is insulting, still using thy, Zoe," Talia muttered in amusement. The lieutenant of Artemis hunters sneered at the three. "The Arcadia shield is the shield of Pan, god of the wild." "Seriously?" Percy asked. "How'd he meet Pan?" "Pan," Percy replied in shock as he turned to face her. "How'd he meet Pan?" A few laughed at that. "Wow, how accurate from your other self, seaweed brain," the child of wisdom giggled, getting red cheeks from her boyfriend. "Thine ears are filled with corn," Zoe snipped at the son of Poseidon. Talia busted a gut at that one along with a few others as the gods snickered, besides Poseidon. Earning the boy's scowl, "I merely stated what the shield was, not how he obtained it." "How did he obtain it?" Mr. D asked in wonder. "That is the question, isn't it?" A question indeed," a new voice said. The three demigods, hunters, centaur and god turned to see the face of Minato Namikaze, aka Apollo, seated on the ledge above them. He looked down and grinned. "Well, looky here, Uncle Squid's kid. How's it goin', Percy?" Poseidon corrected with a harumph. "Percy," the boy corrected with a frown, getting a wave of dismissal from the god. "Whatever," Apollo replied before looking at the field. "Ooh, so it's Fishcake v Hothead, eh? This ought to be good." "Lord Apollo," Annabeth spoke up, getting the god's attention, "don't you have things to do?" "Meh, the wonders of shadow clones," the sun god replied with a shrug. "I have clones." Apollo cheered as he fell to his knees, arms to the sky. "Praise us." "Doesn't mean you do," Athena pointed out, getting the sun god to slump with a depressed whimper. "Why order, why?" Before looking up and whispering, "I just hope the old man doesn't take notice." "You best hope I do not." Zeus rumbled with a frown, but clones really did not sound like a bad idea to have. "What's a shadow clone?" Percy asked. Apollo smirked. "Wouldn't you like to know?" The god teased before looking back at his eldest son with a smile. Whistled aamn, "My kid is hot." "Wouldn't you say so, Talia?" "Zoe." "Well, Talia, Apollo asked you a question, what's your answer?" Leo asked in a mock serious tone. All he got as an answer was Talia punching him in his shoulder while her cheeks burned. Meanwhile Artemis was scolding Apollo for his alternate self trying to mess with her eldest hunter. "Shut it, hold thine tongue, Lord Apollo," the girls replied before glaring at each other. "You can just feel the love," Percy joked as Annabeth laughed a bit while Talia smiled. Apollo's smirk merely widened before he looked at Chiron and Grover, the latter still unconscious while the former was still in shock at seeing the weapon. The god of the sun suddenly froze and groaned, holding his head. His clone had been found out. "Ah, crap," he muttered before looking at his brother. "Hey, D, would you record this for me? I'd leave a shadow clone behind but I know they freak you out." "Humph, what's in it for me?" Mr. D asked with a frown. "Yes, I don't do things for free," said God stated as his arms crossed. Apollo cupped his chin before snapping his fingers. "A week's supply of my best healing ales, if ya know what I mean," the god said with a waggle of his brow. The head counselor mused this before nodding. Zeus growled at Apollo abetting his once half-blood son with alcohol. Mr. D turned to Apollo. "You think you see a?" "No, he cannot." Zeus cut him off with a stern glare, making D pout. "All right, I'll do it. I expect payment after this though," Mr. D warned. Apollo held his arms out innocently. Hermes snorted. "Yeah, and I don't rob people. It's me you're talking about, D. Come on, man, where's the faith?" Upon the blank stare, Apollo frowned. "You're just as bad as little sis." Arrows being drawn hit his ears and the god of the sun smiled cheekily at the hunters. "Oh come on, can't a guy have fun?" Their collective response was a flat, "No." Artemis was all smiles. Apollo left in a brief glow shortly afterwards, in an effort to avoid being made into his sister's hunter's next target. Mr. D sighed at that before snapping his fingers and making a video camera appear. As the god of parties he had access to most recording machines to catch hilarious or embarrassing footage with his elder brother Hephaestus' blessing. The god then stood and said in a bored tone, "Will all non-combatants please leave the arena?" Naruto nodded at Lee as he started to lead the D'Angelo siblings out of the arena, while Mark glared at the blonde newcomer. As soon as they were alone, Mr. D continued with, "Then start the fight." The comic turned into a movie. "Yes, live action," Ares said in a pumped voice. Mar banged his fist on his shield, giving an intimidating war cry. Naruto sighed and scratched his right cheek with his free hand. "Look at me, I'm shaking in my sandals." "Bring it on, hothead." "Grr, die," the Ares child roared as he ran towards the blonde with his left hand held up. Naruto shook his head and brought his own left arm forward, so that the shield was horizontally in front of him. Blue eyes closed as the son of Ares approached. He took a minute breath before his right hand grasped the handle that protruded from his shield. "Roar for me," Naruto thought to the hidden blade as he unsheathed it right when Mark brought his blade down. Naruto parried the downward slash with his own upward one and drove his left fist into his opponent's gut. Mark stumbled backwards as the air left him before glaring at the blonde, who held a blade in his right hand behind him while his shield's fox face glared mockingly at him. "Is that all you've got?" Naruto asked his opponent, getting another snarl from the son of the war god. Mark brought his own shield up and charged, preparing to barrel into the blonde's defense and send him rolling. However, Naruto did the one thing he never thought an opponent would do. He took a step to the right, out of his path. "Oh!" Leo shouted with a snicker. Mark growled and skid to a stop well past the blonde, their distance being equivalent to that from when they started. "Too scared to face me head-on, Sunshine," spat the current counselor of Heir's cabin. Naruto frowned. "That's the best you've got, Sunshine, really?" he asked Mark, "how original. Leave it to the brainless to spawn more brainless ones. Really, they cannot even give any banter?" Athena asked, getting a grumpy Ares who refused to answer her. "You dare mock me? Nah, I'll leave that to you, you do better at embarrassing yourself than I ever could," Naruto replied with a smirk. As he anticipated, Heir's son roared in anger as he charged forward with his shield up once more. Naruto held his ground this time around and, surprisingly, matched Mark's charge. Their shields collided with a clang, and both struggled to knock the other over. "I'm going to decapitate you," Mark proclaimed as he stepped back briefly before throwing his weight into a second shield bash. Naruto scowled and defended himself, but ended up stumbling backwards. Mark leapt on that as a lion would a wounded gazelle, bringing his shield back to slash once again with his sword. As he turned to avoid the strike, Naruto hissed as the blade grazed his exposed bicep, leaving a faint cut in its wake. He jumped away to avoid the following backhand with Mark's shield. "First blood is mine, newbie," Mark arrogantly proclaimed with a smirk as he faced his opponent. "Yes," Ares said with a pump of his fist while Apollo booed. Seems I underestimated you," the blonde mused as he examined the wound. To Mark's and everyone else's shock, it started to steam and heal up a second later. Naruto sent his own smirk in Mark's direction, "Or you simply got lucky. His vitakinesis is rather impressive," Athena stated as she turned to her bow-wielding brother, "You seem to have a gifted one." She complimented. The sun god nodded. "I know, the photokinesis threw me for a loop, but that level of regeneration speed. Nice." Mark's astonishment, matched by those of the other campers, swiftly vanished and he smirked, not arrogantly, but in amusement. "This just got more interesting. All right, Blondie, bring it." Giving a toothy grin, Naruto obliged and ran forward, before vanishing in a flash of yellow just before being in Mark's reach. The war demigod blinked in confusion before swiveling his head around. Where'd he go?" "You lose something," a voice he really didn't want to hear that close asked from behind him before Mark cried out as a blade pierced him through the back. Naruto pulled his blade out and quickly drove the edge of his shield into the back of Mark's helmeted head, knocking the teen out cold. The audience was silent before Chiron started to clap. It set off an explosion of cheers. Jason let out a low whistle. He was playing with him. He could have done that all along and be done with. What's scarier is that we don't even know the reach or speed of that teleportation. He analyzed. No doubt. Man, if only shadow travel wasn't so tiring, Nico whined a little. Percy nodded as the older blonde seemed to just end it in, well, a cliché term, a flash. But seemed to like to play with an opponent a bit before finishing it. Annabeth was quiet with narrowed eyes, thinking intensely, no doubt about that Hiraishin move, her boyfriend thought. Naruto turned to face the crowd as he sheathed his sword, smiling and giving a wave, before looking back down at his foe. Kneeling, Naruto put his free hand on Mark's back before he started to softly rhyme. "My father, Apollo, handsome god of the sun." "Oh, that's a good," Apollo approved with a nod. "Gracious father, Apollo, heal the harm I've done." A surge of energy shot through Naruto's arm into the wound he caused. The blood on the ground from the teen's front slowly began to seep back into Mark's body, dropping any foreign bacteria it may have picked up. The wound itself slowly sealed before leaving a faint scar, no doubt to leave a reminder of the event. Naruto nodded before looking at his shield and sword on his left arm. Nicely done, Naruto thought with a smile as the eyes of the fox on his shield glowed a lighter red briefly. He looked up as someone cried out his name. The blonde grinned at an approaching Nico, standing and walking towards the running 10-year-old. Behind him, Lee and Bianca slowly followed, both giving smiles of their own. Nico barreled into the teen, giving him a congratulatory hug before smiling up at him. That was awesome. Can you teach me how to do that? That depends on whether or not you can stick with my training, Naruto replied with a smile, ruffling the boy's hair affectionately. But yeah. Sweet, Nico replied. Sweet. Percy mocked his cousin. Nico scowled and retorted, how'd he meet Pan? They both glared at each other. Naruto looked back up as Lee stood an arm's length away from his elder brother. Damn, he said, getting elbowed in the side by Bianca. What? There's no other way to say it. Not around Nico, the girl replied with a frown before smiling softly at Naruto. That was cool. That's an understatement, Lee quipped. Whatever you're doing to get that good, count me in. The last time someone made Cabin 5 look stupid was Percy Jackson. Percy swelled with pride, but that was because he made a swirly attempt backfire. And he deflated faster than a balloon losing air. That's mildly impressive, Naruto mused before smirking at his brother. Think you can keep up? Hey, if you can do that, and come out unscathed, I can handle whatever you throw at me, Lee replied with a confident nod. Naruto gave his own before looking up at the area where most of his siblings were. Training starts in an hour, he declared, making the smiling faces nod his way before he faced a slowly waking Mark. The son of Ares was rubbing the back of his head and was now seated on the dirt ground, his helmet at his right with a discarded shield and sword. A tanned hand appeared in his sight and the teen looked up. Naruto gave a small smile. You fought well. Don't get down, I've been fighting kindly ones for years now. Talia and Percy shivered. It was official. This guy had to be some kind of insane if had been fighting kindly ones for years. Hey, then my loss isn't that surprising, the teen muttered before he accepted the hand and got to his feet with determination burning in his eyes. I want a rematch. Some other time, the blonde counselor replied with a smirk. You need to get that concussion looked at. I can only heal visible wounds at the moment. Yeah, I wondered where that cut went, Mark mused as he scratched at his visible stomach through the hole in his armor. TCH, look at what you did. Man, I hope Chuck can fix this. Charlie Beckendorf, the head of Hephaestus Cabin, right? Naruto asked with furrowed brows. Getting a nod, Naruto smiled slightly. Ah, good. I'm getting the names down. Although I thought a girl was in charge of Heir's cabin. Clarice or something. The Greek demigods broke out into peals of laughter. Her name is Clarice, Mark corrected sternly before smirking, and she'd kick your ass for sure. You're lucky she's on a quest right now. With what we have seen. I don't believe so, Percy interjected with a grin at the thought of that fight. I see, Naruto hummed before shrugging. Well, what's done is done. I didn't expect to have to use my old man's gift against you. You're skilled, but that can always be improved. Maybe, the current counselor of Cabin 5 mused before turning towards his brethren and calling over his shoulder. Good fight, Uzumaki. Next time, I'll cream you. If you do, I'll eat my shield. Naruto called back with a smirk. He liked that guy and despite his hot-headedness, the temporary counselor was a good person. Naruto turned back to his two charges and his approaching younger siblings while other campers started to leave. The blonde's smile fell when he noticed Chiron, Talia, Annabeth, Grover and Percy approaching. Naruto, please tell me how you got that thing. Grover begged after he pushed his way to the front, falling to his goat-like knees with his hands clasped together. I'll do anything. I'll trim the grass around your cabin, I'll be your personal caddy, heck, I'll babysit on weekends for eternity, without pay. Oh poor Grover, Annabeth said in a fit of giggles while she covered her mouth as those that knew the goat boy joined in, even some of the gods chuckling in amusement. The blonde laughed, as did his siblings, before clapping a hand on the satyr's shoulder. Relax, I'll tell you how Arcadia came into my possession. It was a gift on my doorstep. Why it was given to me, I haven't the foggiest, Naruto lied smoothly. He knew exactly why he had been given Pan's shield, and it was because of his sage training. Though he may be unable to summon the toads of Mayuboku to his side, he had been able to summon quite a few of his father's symbolic animals. Grover sighed with a hung head. Damn. The satyr yelped when Bianca kicked one of his legs, earning a smirk from the others and another round of laughs from those belonging to Cabin 7. Hestia nodded in approval of the girl's reaction to those caught swearing. Chiron approached next, still in his guise as a wheelchair-bound man. The centaur crossed his arms and looked at the gathered teens before looking at the blonde before him. A training session, he asked. Naruto nodded confidently. The centaur stroked his beard before nodding. See how it goes before I give my approval. Sounds fair, Naruto said before looking at Talia, Annabeth and Percy. He glared momentarily at the latter before smiling at the other two. Wow, he really doesn't like you, Hazel commented with a look to the child of the sea god. What can I do for you girls? Really does not like you. Leo chirped with a snicker. Percy frowned, taking note of how Naruto acknowledged him, while Talia stepped forward with crossed arms. She then extended one arm and poked the teen in the chest, saying, "You owe us an explanation, Whiskers." So demanding, Piper joked, getting heated cheeks from Talia, who pouted at the goddess of love's child. You sure that you don't mean me, Talia? Lee asked with a smirk. See, even that guy is calling you out on it. Nico jeered with mirth-filled eyes. Shut up, Nico, the hunter shouted as she pulled the young boy into a headlock. The two mock wrestled for a bit, before separating with huffs. Bringing attention to the fact that he knew something about their relationship, and making the other Cabin 7 members snicker. It probably didn't help that Naruto talked about his trip with Annabeth, Luke and Talia with his siblings, explaining what took him so long to arrive at the camp vaguely. Stuff it, Fletcher. Talia snapped with red cheeks before rounding back on the sheepish blonde teen in front of her. Can't this wait until after the training, Talia-chan? Naruto pleaded, glancing at his siblings. There are delicate bits I have to leave out. That's what she said, a voice cried from the crowd. All gave a good laugh as Talia caved into her silver jacket as if she was a turtle, just trying to hide from the mocker. Lee bit on his cheek to keep from laughing outright, along with the rest of his cabin, while Naruto and Talia turned beet red. The blonde teen whipped his head to face the group. All right, whoever shouted just made everyone's life a living hell for the next hour. Naruto snapped with a red face. You're gonna get acquainted with my favorite form of tour training. What's that? A curious Nico asked. The blonde smirked at the boy, a smirk that would have made even Hades, Lord of the Underworld, shiver in fear. Really? Hades questioned as he examined the picture, and gave a small shiver. The Lord of the Underworld conceded, impressive. Lee silently cursed whatever idiot sibling had interrupted their eldest brother, while Bianca and Nico swallowed heavily. The other Cabin 7 members all paled like they had the day before when their brother asked. Percy pitied the gathered group while Chiron sighed. I'll go prep the medical tent, the centaur said as he rolled out of the arena. Good old Chiron, Apollo said with a light-heartening laugh. So, who's next? Leo asked, putting the book down. Zero Frank had dried off and had decided to relax. He went to the small game room Leo had built for entertainment purposes and started to play some Galaga. After playing for about an hour, he grinned at putting up his high score, only to realize something. Leaderboard. 5. HLP. 2,996,324. PMA. 3,593,453. PJP. 3,784,692. LVH. 3,957,981. ACA. 4,503,837. 1,542,015. His score wasn't even close. Damn it. Chapter end.